opening the door to a flexible English setup. This flank pawn push immediately contests central space without committing a central pawn. Unleashing a knight so early dictates a flexible approach, potentially challenging the center or launching flank attacks. Developing a knight towards the center creates immediate pressure and flexibility for future plans. Establishing pawn presence in the center sets the stage for future pawn breaks and piece development. Developing the knight naturally aims to control central squares and prepare castling, avoiding premature commitment. Demanding central space immediately, black challenges white's pawn structure with decisive intent. Solidifying the center while preparing to develop the king's bishop opens up the queen's Indian defense for white. Immediately contesting the center with c5 injects dynamism, creating a complex pawn structure ripe for tactical skirmishes. Opening the center like this offers chances for queenside piece activity, but beware of undermining your own pawn structure. Reclaiming the center with the pawn solidifies black's central presence and prepares development. Asserting central control, d4 aims to liberate white's pieces and establish a strong pawn presence. Developing the knight solidifies central control and prepares for potential piece activity on the queen side. Securing the bishop's diagonal allows for a harmonious pawn structure and prepares for kingside castling. Exchanging pawns on d4 opens the c-file for immediate activity, but it also surrenders central control. Reclaiming the center and opening lines for his pieces establishes a comfortable central presence for white. Developing the bishop here sets up a potential exchange sacrifice on f3 to open the king's defenses. Securing the monarch offers immediate safety and prepares to activate rooks along open lines, building pressure. Securely tucking the king away frees up pieces for central engagement and potential attacking maneuvers. Consolidating the knight's outpost and preparing a bishop expansion, this quiet maneuver aims to solidify white's central grip. Prophylactic pawn push, eyeing the queen's knight and a potential queenside expansion. Developing the bishop to this diagonal eyes the kingside and prepares to support a central pawn advance, offering good scope. Reconnecting the rook to the central theater, black prepares to contest the open files and reinforce their pawn structure. Asserting dominion over the semi-open c-file, this rook eyes potential breakthroughs and discourages black's queenside expansion. Developing the bishop here supports the pawn structure and prepares for potential queenside expansion. The bishop now aims at the queenside, eyeing potential weaknesses while reinforcing the central pawn structure. Trading the knight simplifies the center, aiming to open diagonals for your bishops. Unlocking the d-file offers promising attacking avenues, but opens the door for counterplay. Activating the bishop to eye the queen and destabilize white's central structure. Repositioning the queen to defend against potential pawn advances, and keep options open for queen trades or re-engagement on other diagonals. Exposing the white king's diagonal opens up exciting tactical possibilities for your bishops, creating a dynamic imbalance. Fortifying the d-file, white aims to disrupt black's bishop pair and prepare for potential central advances, creating a dynamic pawn structure. Exchanging the bishop removes a key defender of white's king, potentially opening avenues for black's pieces to exploit the weakened kingside. Opening that kingside pawn structure now grants active piece play, though it leaves your monarch exposed to potential sacrifices later. Now black shifts focus to the kingside, subtly preparing a rook lift and potentially undermining white's pawn structure. Securing the king's escape route from potential dark square threats by creating a vital luft for immediate safety. This probe toward the kingside, after the doubled pawns, aims to disrupt white's piece coordination and create tactical opportunities. Opening the king's diagonal for a swift attack while subtly reinforcing the center. Liberating the bishop from its cramped post, black initiates a dynamic trade, seeking to simplify and activate forces. Gaining the queenside pawn majority is a solid positional gain, though it leaves your king somewhat exposed on the semi-open g-file. Asserting presence on the open file this rook now eyes the queenside, aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure and initiate counterplay. Opening a critical diagonal for the knight, this injection of activity disrupts black's coordinated pieces and prepares potential kingside threats. Probing black's central influence, this maneuver actively contests the d-file, aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure and prepare for bolder piece play. Securing the open c-file, this maneuver prepares for queenside pressure, potentially exploiting the weakened pawn structure. A crucial defensive redistribution, this knight embarks on a journey to reinforce its comrade on c8, aiming to bolster the queenside's structural integrity against white's looming pawn storm. Doubling rooks on the c-file intensifies pressure, seeking breakthroughs against black's static pieces. Securing a foothold on the b-file, black aims to pressure white's queenside structure and disrupt their coordination. This centrally positioned queen exerts significant influence, aiming to disrupt black's pawn structure and potentially seize the c-file. Repositioning the knight to f8 aims to untangle its position and potentially eye the kingside. The queenside blockade is finally broken, opening new lines for white's assault. Repositioning the queen to eye the weakened dark squares and prepare for potential pawn pushes. A daring maneuver, unmasking the king while seeking to exploit the open c-file and pressure the queenside. This knight boldly ventures into the enemy's territory, aiming to disrupt white's central control and potentially fork pieces. Seizing the open f-file opens new attacking avenues for white's rook and king. Opening the f-file now offers attacking avenues, potentially targeting the white king's safety. A bold assertion of control over the 7th rank, challenging black's pawn structure and eyeing potential weaknesses. Reclaiming the open d-file with this rook is crucial to challenge white's central pawn structure. Creating an attacking spearhead along the kingside, preparing for pawn advances. Opening the e-file could be a double-edged sword for black, potentially creating weaknesses around the king. Pressing the initiative along the open file, this aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and create attacking chances. Seeking refuge on the king's side, black attempts to bolster his defenses against the looming pressure. Targeting the weak pawn structure, this advance aims to create new attacking avenues on the king's side. Securing the rook's position against the imminent pawn advance is paramount now. The monarch's shield is thinning, inviting aggressive probes along the open files. Opening the d-file and challenging white's central space aggressively, but it might weaken your king's defenses. Opening the e-file decisively carves a direct assault path towards black's uncastled king. Reclaiming the initiative, black's rook reclaims vital central influence, disrupting white's queenside pawn push. Focusing the queen on the kingside could initiate a swift assault against black's somewhat exposed monarch. Intensifying pressure on the weakened queenside, this rook aims to disrupt white's defenses and open new avenues for attack. Repositioning the rook to attack black's vulnerable pawns on the queenside, creating dynamic counterplay. Shifting the rook to the open file aims to challenge white's control and potentially prepare for a kingside pawn push. Simplifying the position by exchanging the rooks is a sound decision, aiming for an advantageous endgame. The f-pawn capture opens the king, potentially creating a critical weakness for white's monarch as the game simplifies. Opening the kingside pawn structure now is an aggressive gamble, hoping to exploit the exposed black king. Introducing the b-pawn strategically to shore up the queenside and prepare for potential pawn breaks. Activating the rook to the 7th rank seizes a crucial open file and pressures black's queenside pawns. Shielding the vulnerable back rank, this defender seeks to stabilize the crumbling pawn structure. Clearing the f-file opens up opportunities for your rooks to dominate the back rank, creating decisive pressure. The king's new central outpost offers surprising attacking potential against the exposed queenside pawns. King pursuit intensifies, forcing a critical decision for black's monarch. Reuniting the king with its defenders offers a measure of security against further pressure on the open diagonal. Unleashing a decisive check, This move forces the black king into a precarious, exposed position, signaling the immediate endgame collapse. Relocating the monarch offers precious breathing room, avoiding immediate checks and aiming to solidify its position in the center. Capturing the pawn immediately liberates the queen for a more active role in the queenside. A desperate check seeking a perpetual, but the white king has escaped to safety. The monarch vacates a dangerous diagonal after the check, seeking sanctuary from the persistent queen. Recapturing the pawn is logical, but it opens lines towards your monarch, potentially creating new defensive burdens. Exploiting the exposed monarch, white forces a decisive exchange to hunt down the enemy king. Relocating the monarch offers a brief respite, seeking refuge from the persistent white queen's pressure and potential tactical traps. Initiating a queenside pawn advance aims to disrupt black's defensive structure and potentially create new attacking avenues. Unleashing the queen for a potential mating attack, aiming to exploit white's exposed monarch. The monarch scurries to safety, seeking refuge on the king's side. Pawn thrusts on the king's side are often a double-edged sword, potentially opening escape routes but also creating weaknesses. Unleashing a decisive check, white aims to exploit the exposed black king and force a favorable endgame exchange. The king's journey toward the queen's side begins, aiming to escape the central threats and potentially join the pawn push. Unleashing the queen to patrol the critical diagonal, aiming to exploit the exposed black king. Relocating the queen to the king's side aims to create some much-needed chaos and potential mating threats against white's vulnerable monarch. Unlocking the queenside pawn potential is key to generating counterplay. Pushing the h-pawn opens a perilous pathway for the black king, potentially overextending black's defenses. Exploiting the open king with a decisive pawn sacrifice opens a swift path to checkmate. Pushing the g-pawn aggressively aims to create unstoppable threats on the queen's side, disrupting white's coordination. Pushing the pawn forward injects a vital element of activity into the queen's side, aiming to disrupt black's advancing pawns. Black opens a new diagonal for the queen to potentially harass the white king. Exploiting the open queen file offers a clear path to victory. Unleashing the pawn chain now creates active play, potentially disrupting white's well-placed pieces and opening lines toward the king. This pawn push creates an immediate race, aiming to promote before black can organize a defense.